My content today is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to take a break from my funny videos and my videos about domestic violence and about my kids. Today I'm going to post a video about grief and how dealing with grief can display itself differently in different people. So today is July 28th, 2025. My grandma Rosemary, oh my God, today is her birthday. And she definitely, not only am I named after her, but my grandma Rosemary was my first display of a strong woman. My grandma Rosemary was my first display of a woman who is multifaceted. My grandma Rosemary was my first display of a woman who was so selfless, loving, and nurturing that she raised her 6 kids while working 2 jobs. She didn't have a middle school, high school, or college education. She dropped out in elementary. She was a sharecropper. My grandma picked cotton. She's from the South. And things happened to her when she was a child. She had her first child at a very young age. And she wound up having 6 children, moved to the Midwest, and oh my goodness, my grandma raised all her kids by herself. 2 of her kids have their own dad. All the rest of her kids have the same dad. And he was in California. He was definitely a Rolling Stone. Grandpa Jesse, wherever he laid his hat, was his home. I never met him. He passed away before I was born. He lived in California. My grandma raised all 6 of her children alone, and all of her kids started working at a very young age. My grandma has got to be well over 100, probably hundreds of grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. She has a lot of grandchildren. My grandma's house was always the house that people went to whenever they were financially unstable, or whenever they were needing some love, or if their addiction got to them, or whatever it was. Grandma's house was always that. To be transparent, there was a lot of sexual abuse that happened at my grandma's house. I was one of the children that was sexually abused. Never by my grandma, but there were people in our family who were not in the best place mentally because of things that happened to them as a child, and they pushed that off onto other people. A lot of it was children touching children, but there was definitely an adult in our family. Actually, my oldest uncle, he passed away in prison because he couldn't stop raping people. But he passed away in prison. But he started a lot of the sexual abuse in our family, and it just kind of pushed off onto other people. But with all these things that were happening, my grandma always smiled. I'm telling you right now, I can't think of one time that my grandma was not smiling. Grandma Rosie always had a smile on her face. The world could be crashing and burning. She could have $0 in her pocket while she got 7 people living with her, and she will still be smiling. My grandma worked 2 jobs majority of her life. She's the first person that I ever did their hair and their feet. I love to do feet. I'm a cosmetologist and I love doing pedicures, right? My grandma's feet were so sore, you could tell that nobody ever gave her that type of love, because now that I actually do this and I've worked in retirement homes, I know that nobody's feet gets like that from them taking care of it. Her feet were never taken care of. My grandma's feet were so calloused and dry that if you touched it, it could literally crack just from you touching it. They were so dry. She had purple and black marks on her feet. Really thick calluses. Her toenails were purple and black. I used to massage and clip her toenails, and I would make her toes feel so good. And I never really understood what exactly I was doing, but I was a part of attempting to help heal her, and I didn't even realize that. I was just a grandchild who loved my grandma. I was in my grandma's house every weekend. If I wasn't at my grandma's house, I was over my Uncle Tommy's house every weekend. My grandma checked in. My grandma showed up for everybody. And when she got to a point where she could no longer take care of herself, she moved to Oklahoma with my aunt, who is also a domestic violence survivor, who moved to Oklahoma due to domestic violence decades ago and has never moved back to Kansas. And I wound up moving to Missouri 4 years ago for the same thing, so I completely understand that now. But anyway, she moved in with my aunt and was taken care of until the bitter end. My grandma wound up needing surgery, and she woke up from her surgery but didn't leave the hospital. That was back in 2020, January of 2020. The grief. For me, the grief did not come from losing my grandma. Because as an adult, I did not see my grandma as much as I saw her when I was a child. The grief did not come from losing her on this earth. I feel as though my grief came from realizing that my grandma never received the type of love that she gave people. I started calling my grandma every week. I started calling my grandma every week when I was pregnant with my son. She passed away when I was pregnant with my son. I just felt like I needed to call her. And every time I called her, she would say the same thing. Grandma, tired, baby. That's what she would always say. I'm just so tired, baby. I'm ready to see the good Lord. I'm just ready to go on home to glory. And every time she said that, I would get mad at her. Grandma, I didn't call you to hear that. I called you to see how you're doing, Grandma. I love you. Like, I want to check on you. And in my selfishness, I got mad at her for telling me how she genuinely felt. She genuinely was tired of being on earth. She genuinely was ready to go. She genuinely did not want to be here anymore. And I, selfishly, wanted her to stay so that I could somehow feel like if I want to come out and visit you, I can. That's not a reason to want somebody to stay. She's living in Oklahoma, barely seeing anybody ever for years. And now that she's about to pass away, you selfishly tell her that she shouldn't feel that way. My Uncle Jesse, the first person, probably the only person in our family to ever touch $1 million, started his own business bartending for rich folks. Bartending for sports events, for fashion events, for private parties in rich neighborhoods. Employed so many people in our family. So many people did him wrong, but so many people helped his business stay afloat. And his wife took his life in December of 2019. And then my grandma passed away in January of 2020. And I cannot believe that this is a coincidence that this happened. I feel as though the grief from losing her son while she was already sick and ready to go herself, I feel like that's why she didn't make it after her surgery. My grandma was on dialysis multiple times a week. Her body was not doing what it needed to do. Her organs were shutting down. She was in pain all day, every day. She lost half of her body weight. She was wheelchair bound. She didn't want to be here anymore. And it was very selfish of me to want her to stay just because I love her. I say all this to say, my Uncle Jesse, who was my most influential uncle, my grandma, who I was the closest to, I think about them and they are the reason. They are the literal reason that I never give up. They're not the only reason, because I do have children of my own, and I do know that God is here for me. But I think about their stories, and I think about the things that they went through with family, just with life in general, and I'm like, but they always had a smile on their face. They went through so much, but you never saw them like not smiling. So how could I not? And I don't feel as though I grieve the same way as other people, because I'm not angry, and I don't wish they would come back. I wish they had better lives while they were here, but I thank God that they were in my life for the amount of time that they were, so I could learn the things that I learned. And I pray that I'm able to do the same for somebody else.